Hello everyone, it's me, Dustin. I'm back talking about elevators in the Myst series, and you're back listening to me talk about elevators in the Myst series. What a time to be alive. The topic of today's discussion are the elevators in the new Riven remake. Unlike the last video, this one is not a ranked list, but rather a discussion of how the elevators found in Riven 2024 compare to the originals in Riven 1997, as well as looking at the new never-before-seen elevators. Riven 2024 is a remake of the 1997 classic. The original had pre-rendered images that you could click through to move between locations, while the new one has fully real-time 3D locations that you can explore. It's so exciting being able to wander around these islands that we know and love, and that Cyan is able to bring their worlds to a new generation of enthusiasts. The developers clearly put a lot of thought and detail into every facet of the game. This game isn't a direct remake of the original. They changed some of the puzzles and added some things and got rid of the creepy jungle girl. But what matters most in this series of videos is one thing and one thing only: the little devices that go up and down and sometimes forward and back. The original game had 6 elevators. 5 of those have been brought into the remake. I was excited to find out that there is not a single one of those 5 that is exactly the same as the original, so I have a lot to talk about. Additionally, 5 brand new, never-before-seen elevators were created for the sole purpose of giving me more videos to edit. In total, there are 10 elevators in this game, which makes it tie with Myst 3 Exile as the game with the highest quantity of elevators. I'd like to start talking about the elevators in the new game, but first let's take a moment of silence to remember those that we've lost. That's right, the Golden Dome elevator, which I ranked the lowest of all the Riven elevators, has been removed. I don't blame them at all. It must be the most boring looking elevator in the entire series. It's just a square stone. The only interesting things about it are the triangular wedges beneath it, which you only see if you're creating a video about elevators and think, I need more footage, I wonder if the elevator will go up without me if I press the button. I do, however, quite like the button. The reason I ranked the elevator so low in the last video was due to the trek that you have to make around 3 islands just to get it working. I even discussed how I thought that would be even worse with free movement, so they would have to change something in the remake. And they did. They got rid of the whole elevator. The elevator previously took you to the fire dome, so instead they put the fire dome directly outside one of the exits of the rotating room. That exit previously led to a locked door that you could open from the other side after raising the elevator in the walkway. This back way into the Golden Dome was never all that necessary, so puzzle-wise nothing really changed by moving the fire dome here. It also aided in their overall overhaul of the Golden Dome. Now, instead of the lower level leading to an elevator and a pipe switch, it leads to Gen's projection room, which makes more sense than having it right next to the temple where he's projected. Overall, I'm in favor of all these changes to the Golden Dome. It takes out the tedium of having to switch discs 3 times, and it enhances the locations a bit. Now let's talk about the elevators that existed in the old Riven. I've discussed each of these in my last video, so if you haven't seen it, go watch it. If you have seen it, go watch it again. I'll discuss them in the order that I ranked them for no particular reason. First up is what I called the Topography Elevator. Unfortunately, the topography building seems to have sunk into the water in the remake, so this one could be more accurately called the elevator formerly known as the Topography Elevator. Of all the elevators ported over, this one is by far the most changed. As you're riding it, you'll notice that unlike the original, which just had one button, press once to go up, pressed again to go down, this one now has an up and a down button. Additionally, there's a 5x5 grid of black circles. That's interesting because that number doesn't appear much throughout the game. Like in the original, you can walk over to the edge of the platform and look down upon the models of the islands. But unlike the original, which allowed you to press buttons to make the islands bubble, this new one has a slider puzzle. You need to move all of the islands into place so they form a square. This puzzle reminded me of the game Freddy Fish 2: The Case of the Haunted Schoolhouse. Okay, on one hand, the fire marble puzzle, which is basically one of Riven's 2 puzzles, has been excessively dumbed down by removing the topography aspect of it and reducing the grid from 25 by 25 to 5 by 5. But on the other hand, it seems perfectly in character for Gen to believe that the Rivenese natives are not smart enough to figure out a slider puzzle, so it's a safe way to hide the code to his survey room. Putting the code into the elevator unlocks a new floor. The elevator takes you further down than the bottom floor to a subterranean shaft, then takes you horizontally for a bit, then vertically some more to the survey room. After the rail elevator in Myst 4, this is now the second elevator in the series that moves horizontally. Besides the location, some videos, and the amount of times the Wahrk will come, the survey room is basically the same. I've seen mixed opinions online, but I really like the new location. Just like the projector room I previously discussed, it makes sense for Gen to hide his survey room. I also quite like the feeling of the elevator moving through the cavern vertically and horizontally. If you watched my last video, you'll know I like the ones that are perfectly embedded within rocks. Next up is the prison elevator. In the old game, you first go to Prison Island from age 233, and you use the elevator to visit Catherine in her cell. The elevator itself has a cage on one side of it, and only by trapping Gen you can find the sound code that rotates the cage, giving access to Catherine's room. In this game, however, the elevator itself is hidden by a rotating wall, and using the sound code allows the elevator to be accessed. In order to talk to Catherine earlier in the game, you can go up a series of ladders to the opposite side of the tree structure. When you've trapped Gen and take the ladder, there's a weird fade out, and suddenly you're inside the room and Catherine gives her "we're all free" speech.
We have to move quickly. You did it. You captured Gen. We're all free. Oh, and don't forget the combination in my journal. You'll need it.
Then she takes the elevator and leaves you in her cell. What I don't understand is how she knows that the elevator will still be accessible after she takes it. The sound lock was clearly broken by Gen, and if she had been able to use the elevator, she would have left a long time ago. How does she know that she's not leaving you locked in her cell, unable to leave and destined to die when Riven collapses? However, her leaving you potentially trapped in the room gives you the opportunity to explore the cell. In the original game, there were 3 places that I always wished that I could explore: Tay, age 233, and Catherine's cell. Coincidentally, all of the places on Disc 1. This game rectifies all of those. You get to see what Catherine's been eating, as well as her lovely view. Then luckily you're actually able to take the elevator and finish the game. I ranked the original elevator so high partly because of Sheila Gould's performance. Since making my last video, I learned that Sheila Gould unfortunately passed away in 2017. Unlike with John Keston, who played Gen and who passed away in 2022, Catherine had some new lines and thus had a new voice actor. I think her new voice actor, Lauren Gamiel, played a great Catherine. That being said, the live-action videos in the original were just so memorable, and it's sad that they couldn't be incorporated into a fully 3D game. Rest in peace, Sheila Gould and John Keston. Next we have the Watchtower Elevator. This one depresses me. First of all, the lighting up here is incredibly bright, which washes out the rocks in the building to the point where you can't even see the gold trim. Then you open the door and come face to face with the worst VR concession in the game, this platform. For some background, this building is the building Gen would rise to the top of and then drop his hostages into the water, feeding them to the giant Wahrks below. He did this from an opulent, engraved golden chair that rotated as it rose and was surrounded by a full Wahrk jawbone, demonstrating his power over the great beasts. However, this new game was created for virtual reality, and as a result cannot have fancy things like sitting in chairs. My favorite chair in the whole game was replaced by a boring metal platform that doesn't even rotate. Luckily, they maintained a Wahrk jawbone. It's just now affixed to the top of the building instead of rising with a sitting gen. Gameplay-wise, this elevator is exactly the same, with the left lever making it go up and down, and the right lever opening and closing the Wahrk gallows. Close by is the Wahrk Elevator. Like the original, this elevator goes between the bottom floor maglev station, to the second floor Wahrk idol, to the top floor where you can access the spinning dome and the disappointing Watchtower. The main difference lies in the accessibility of the elevator. In the original, there was a hidden switch that opened the maw of the idol, allowing you to reach the elevator early on. In the new game, unless I just didn't look hard enough, there's no button to open the Wahrk. One of the two main ways the developers made this game more linear than the predecessor was by removing this feature, so now you can only access the elevator after going to Boiler Island and Survey Island. Like in the original, you watch Gen's scribe taking the maglev from Survey Island to Jungle Island. Then you can follow him to Jungle Island. Unlike the original, however, the elevator is not at the bottom floor when you get there. Originally, I thought this made a lot of sense, because Gen's scribe would have had to have taken the elevator to leave. But what's really weird is that the Wahrk jaw is not open when you take the elevator up, and the submarine is in the submarine room. That means that the only other option for where the scribe went is for him to have taken the fire marble dome passage into the Starry Expanse. Was Gen letting his underlings into the Starry Expanse? I really doubt that. I have no idea where the scribe went. The point is that when you take the elevator and open the Wahrk jaw, it stays open. This makes no sense because A, it means that the scribe could not have left via the Wahrk, and B, it blows the cover of the elevator. The whole purpose is that Gen is trying to use the Wahrk imagery to scare the natives away from finding the elevator. But if the Wahrk mouth is left perpetually open, that blows the cover. It works for the gameplay because that button in the original was ridiculously hard to find, but the concept completely falls apart if you spend an excess amount of time thinking about the elevators in this game. Next up, we have my favorite elevator in the series, the Golden Elevator on Survey Island. Ah yes, once again you're able to watch this glorious device rise in a golden pool, and this time, due to the game's aforementioned linearity, you absolutely will see this occur. You know I love this sequence, so I'll play the two back to back so you can compare them. This was probably the least changed elevator from the original game, but it has a couple small alterations, both cosmetic and functional. I think the main difference in look is that in the original it was difficult to tell that the surface was water until the elevator rose from it, while in this one the orange surface is shimmering and there's caustic light throughout the room. There are two main working differences between the original and the new. First of all, as you descend, in the original the elevator spins counterclockwise, while the new one spins clockwise. I'm curious as to whether there was an actual reason for this, or whether they decided to just make it spin in a direction and didn't care which. The other main difference is that they fixed a weird occurrence. For the sake of time, I didn't mention this in the first video, but in the original, it was nearly impossible to find this elevator on the top floor if you entered from the bottom floor. The elevator would always be there waiting for you. You could ride the elevator up, hop from Survey Island to Boiler Island to Jungle Island and back to Survey Island, and the elevator will still be waiting for you where you didn't leave it. The only way for you to see the cool blue button that reminds me of the tower elevator in the first game is for you to take the elevator up, go to age 233, go to Jungle Island, and then go to Survey Island. Now you don't have to go through all that noise, because the elevator will simply stay put like a well-trained dog. However, the blue diamond is no longer the call button, and there's a lever that you use instead. The last difference does not directly pertain to the elevator, but rather the context of the elevator. As I stated before, the elevator formerly known as the Topography Elevator now takes you to the survey room. As a result, the golden elevator no longer takes you to the survey room, and instead just links the maglev stations that bring you to Boiler Island and Jungle Island. One last thing that I wanted to note is how the freeform movement of the new game interacts with this elevator. I think this elevator in particular is an interesting case study into how moving from still movement to free movement has an effect on what the developers want to showcase. In the original, there was a single video that played when this elevator rose. The developers could create a very specific effect, and it clearly had an effect on me as it made me make the last video. Now, however, the players are free to view this elevator rising from whatever angle they want. This leads to a whole range of different ways to experience it. It's interesting to think about. And that wraps up all of the elevators that appeared in the original game. But what makes this game so freaking exciting is that half the elevators in it are brand new, so let's get into those. The one you are guaranteed to encounter first is the Minecart Elevator. The moment I found it, I realized that without a doubt I would have to make another video. This elevator is located in a brand new location on Boiler Island, the Fire Marble Mines. This is where Gen excavates geodes in order to make his marbles. That means that this game has at least one elevator on every island. Boiler Island was missing out before, but now it can join in on the fun. In the original game, in order to enter Gen's laboratory, you had to turn off a fan and climb through an air duct and then descend into the lab. In this game, however, you go down into the mine shaft, drain the water, and take an elevator up into the lab. The location itself is gorgeous with its empty geode shells, stalactites, and its caustic light. Both the location and the music remind me of the mine shaft from the Gauntlet in Abduction. When you go down onto the track, you can use a tool to get a raw fire marble. The minecart has a cute little crib that you can put it into. Then you can ride the minecart up the track a bit. In order to hook it up to the elevator, you first have to pull another crank to bring down the elevator casing. Something odd I noticed is that both this crank and the one on the minecart have 4 metal bars connecting the rim to the axle. In every other game, this would look like a normal wheel, but in a game in which the main architect of the world is so fixated on the number 5 that it shows up in nearly every design choice he makes, it's odd to see a device with an even number. Anyway, what's so cool about this elevator is the fact that it's in 2 parts, and you have to connect them together. In order to do so, you ride the minecart into the casing, and then pull a lever to connect the wheel. It took me way too long to figure out that second step when I played the game for the first time. Originally when I played, in order to move these cranks you had to turn them yourself. But when I recorded footage for this video, I noticed they changed it so you only have to click the wheel to make it turn. This makes it more obvious that turning the wheel before it's hooked up to the casing is the wrong thing to do. Now if they could only update the steam puzzle elevator in Myst 3 the same way. Though I must say, I did really enjoy cranking the wheel to bring the elevator up. The quality of the elevator ride is very different from when you had to crank it yourself to now when you just have to press a button. Regardless, if you remember me talking about the Haven elevator in Myst 4, I'm a sucker for mechanical elevators, and this one is no different. You can even see the counterweight descend when you bring it up. I also love that the casing is very reminiscent of the design of the Golden Elevator. And finally, almost as fan service, as soon as you enter Gen's laboratory from the elevator, you can see the same frog trap from the original game. That means that not only did they add this gorgeous new location, but they maintained some of the nostalgic aspects of the room it replaced. After letting the frog go, you can use the fire marble that you dug up to learn about resonance frequencies for the fire marble puzzle. The next addition is the Submarine Elevator. This is the elevator that brings the submarine from its subterranean layer down to the bottom of the lake so it can be used. There actually was a similar device in the original, albeit in a different location, but I did not include it because the player themselves is not able to ride it. Now, not only did they repurpose it so you can take it up and down, but they beautified it too. In order to access it, you perform the same intelligent maneuver of turning around the maglev and exiting as you did to get the golden elevator, but this time you do it on Jungle Island. It takes a clever mind to realize the developers might pull the same trick twice. Then you enter a large cavern that has a submarine in it. It's exciting because you were teased by the vehicle earlier, but now you actually get to use it. The cavern is lit by an open skylight, which unfortunately I was not able to find the top of when walking around the island. If you are able to find this, please let me know in the comments. You then go up a staircase and extend a ladder via a lever to enter the submarine. The elevator is usable from within the submarine by choosing a location to bring it to. The submarine is a lot easier and less tedious to use than the original, so you just pick one of the 5 spots. Then the elevator brings you down into the water and you're ready to explore. Here are some things to note about the elevator. First of all, it's gorgeous. It's a detailed metal disc with the most Riven-esque design you can possibly think of, illuminated by a yellow light from below. On top of that, upon ascension, it rotates so that the submarine is always facing forward on the track. This is the only elevator in the series that rotates when going in one direction but does not rotate going the other. It's such a subtle, clever design choice that I'm sure went unnoticed by a lot of people. Then you can take the submarine to the next elevator, the Wahrk Gallows Elevator. This is the second elevator in a row that had an equivalent in the old game but did not fit the criteria. Back then it was a trapeze that would come down and bring you up. Oddly enough, it was not possible to bring the trapeze back down. This would trap the submarine at that location, so you would not be able to access the schoolhouse if you wanted to learn how to count to 10. The only way to get to the submarine again was to leave the island, and when you came back, the submarine would have teleported to its original spot. The way they solved this in the new game is twofold. First of all, they added a walkway down to the schoolhouse so the Rivenese children no longer have to take the submarine to school. Additionally, they replaced the trapeze with a circular metal elevator that you can take up and down. The elevator has a Rivenese star design along with 5 bars on the underside that people can be hooked up to and lowered into the water to be devoured. It has 3 levels it goes to. The bottom of the gallows, which you can access when the platform is closed, the top level, which brings you to the prison cell and the secret tunnel, and the tippy top level, which you can't ride to, but which allows Gen's followers to strap the prisoners to the bars when they're standing on the top level. In order to ride the elevator, there are 3 buttons, one for each level. You bring the elevator down with the bottom button. Then the middle button works on a timer like the mechanical age elevator from the first game, where you press the button and have some time to get in it before it goes up. There's a couple weird things about this elevator though. First of all, when you press the button to go back down, there's a cut in the video between pressing the button and when it starts descending. The only other time in a game when I can think of this happening is when you go up the prison elevator into Catherine's cell. Second of all, despite this elevator being used to chain people to and descend them to a possible demise, the elevator does not actually descend when the gallows are open. It even makes a buzzer noise to signify this is not possible. This, and possibly the trapeze from the original as well, is due to the fact that it would not be possible to ascend again once reaching the bottom. The buttons would be too far away. One workaround they could have done instead would be to allow the player to descend and have the elevator ascend automatically on a timer once reaching the bottom, and maybe even have a Wahrk swim by below. This would have the added effect of making players ponder the people that were executed, as well as be a neat parallel with the Pavlovian response the Wahrk on Survey Island has to the red feeding light. Next up we have the Tay Elevator. As I said earlier, I was excited to be able to explore Tay a little in this game, unlike its predecessor. It's pretty much exactly what I would have imagined, a giant colony in a tree. There are a bunch of moiety people ominously standing around too. What I really like is that the way they design their infrastructure within the age is the same way they designed their village on Riven. There's no puzzles to solve here, it's just a one-way walk from the cell to the link back to Riven. However, just before you reach the book, there's a nice wooden elevator you take down to the bottom floor. It's operated by a pulley system by one of the moiety people on the top floor. It's actually the only elevator in the series that's operated by another person. They will not bring you back up, so you can only go down with it. It's probably quite heavy to pull someone back up, though I'm not actually convinced your character has a body, so maybe it wouldn't be. As I've stated multiple times already, I love purely mechanical elevators, and this one has a cool diamond pattern in the back of the shaft made of zigzagging tree branches. Additionally, there are various lights hanging from it that I assume are from some source native to Tay, just as many bioluminescents are used to illuminate Riven. And finally, we have the last new elevator in the game, the Fire Marble Elevator. The Fire Marble puzzle is the culmination of all of the knowledge that you've cultivated through perusing Gen's data. In the original game, as I stated previously, the Golden Dome had an exterior elevator that in order to use, you would have to press a button and then loop around 3 islands. Then you pull a lever which would raise a staircase to the Fire Marble puzzle. And finally, you would have to do the 3-island trek in reverse to access the puzzle. While I love the majestic nature of ascending the staircase to the puzzle in the original game, I understand that making this journey around the island is quite demanding, especially when your only options are actually walking or taking the slow travel system through the starry expanse. Given that the bridge to Boiler Island collapsed as well, and I'm not sure your character knows how to swim through cracked water, doing the original route would prove impossible. So they solved the first trek by taking away the Golden Dome elevator, and they solved the second trek by adding the Fire Marble elevator. This device seamlessly blends in with the metal walkway inside the Golden Dome. You can power it on by activating all 5 lasers in the starry expanse. It's great that the button on the walkway has an indicator for how many of them you've activated, so you know exactly what you're building towards. When you finally accomplish this, you press the button. First a guardrail raises in back, then a Fire Marble receptacle raises in front, then a spinny machine raises around the book, ready to power it on. Then the 5 marbles are dispensed into the receptacle, and you're ready to solve the puzzle. While I am sad about the diminution of one of my favorite puzzles of all time, I think the glowing colorful fire marbles are gorgeous in this game. When you lower the elevator, they stay in place for as long as you haven't solved the puzzle. When you do solve it, some sparks and steam come out of the machine, the furnace comes on, and you go back down. When you reach the bottom, you can look up and pretend you're playing a different puzzle game for a little bit. After that, the elevator no longer works, but some particle effects indicate that you can now use the linking book to access Age 233. Anyway, that's all the elevators in the new Riven game. Thank you for watching. I enjoyed playing the new game, and I'm so happy the developers put so much thought into bringing it to life through a new medium. I think the original Riven is one of the best games of all time, and playing the new one was a great experience. I'm very happy that both games are now accessible and playable, and they're ripe for comparing their elevators. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and that every once in a while you take a little time to notice details that often go unnoticed. The creation of art takes much more time than the consumption, so it's a nice tribute to the artists to appreciate the extra effort. Okay, bye-bye now.